Hello, my friends, and welcome to the episode 2 of the $20 or Less podcast, the game that knows that video games are expensive. We are recording live on February 1st, 2015, and I'm your host, JD, aka Gaddock Teeg, and with me today is my co-host, Cosmic Engine. How you doing today, Cosmic?
I'm very good, thank you. You?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm still getting over that cold that I had last week. I
Mhm.
just can't seem to shake it, taking lots of vitamin C and all that jazz, but still hasn't helped me that much. But I have been playing a lot of games this week, which is good. I had a lot of free time this week. I decided to pick up The Witcher, which was one of your suggestions. I decided not to play Skyrim or any of the Elder Scrolls games and play the better version, as many people put it. And it's an interesting start. I have a problem with games that choose to go with like a real-time battle system, but don't have collision in the battle system. So you're just swinging your sword out in the air. That's always my big problem with the Elder Scrolls games, is
So,
it
so
doesn't
did you
feel
buy the
weighty.
first Witcher?
Yes, I bought the first Witcher,
Okay.
the enhanced edition. I decided to start there. I like to start games from the beginning, even if
Uh,
people say, "Oh, don't do that, don't do that." A lot of people told me to start Mass Effect 2 instead of going back to Mass Effect, but I just feel like you miss out on a lot of things if you do that. So I decided to start with the first one, and so far the story is interesting. I think it looks great for a game. Was that 2009? I think 2010 that game was
hmm
released. That game looks great still today. But the combat system feels dated to me. It felt dated in Skyrim and all the Elder Scrolls games. So it has a few wrinkles in it, but I just can't get myself to enjoy that type of combat.
No, I mean with the Witcher, I enjoyed the story of the first one, but you'll find that in the second Witcher, there's a big disconnect and change in the gameplay because they basically rework the entire game and it
Mm.
changes from kind of the top down system of the first game and they change it into more of a third person RPG in the second, which works for the better, I think.
Yeah, that's something I can see. Whoa, whoops. Okay, all right, we're good again. Yeah, I think that the the story is what'll keep me going in that game. What I really wanted to play this week actually was I wanted to go back and start Dark Souls again because I've been watching a lot of the speed runs of Dark Souls on YouTube. And I really wanted to get back into it, but for some reason, every time I launch that game, it crashes. They have the worst PC ports at From Software. Dark Souls 2 is a little better, but it's a worse game, and there's still issues with it. I have to turn off like all of my keyboard and everything to be able to play it with a controller. There's so many issues with that game, but I love it so bad. It's like an abusive girlfriend almost. I
Yeah.
just always find myself going back to that game because that's the combat I want. It feels weighty, it feels good. Everything feels like what you're doing is what your character is doing. It is like a direct one-to-one relationship from your mind to the game as long as you're playing it right.
Yeah, I've never enjoyed the Dark Souls games.
Oh, really?
I will shamefully admit. I know people are like, what? Why don't you enjoy Dark Souls? I'm like, well, because it's frustrating, is why. And I understand why people like it, because I do like challenging in games, and I do like um, mechanics where if I don't get it just right, that you fail basically. But
Mhm.
that game has just never ever been able to make me sit there for more than 10 minutes without going, do you know what? I can't be bothered. I'll go play
Yeah, I
something else.
there's definitely that first hump to get over that you really have to work hard to get over. That it's interesting because a lot of people say that Dark Souls it's so good because it's so difficult, but I feel like it's not so good because it's difficult. It's so good because it's fair and difficult. Like you were saying before, that being fair in a game and being difficult is a much more challenging thing for a developer to do than just being difficult. They can put in as many one-shot deaths in a boss fight as they want.
Yeah.
They can put in as many bullet hell shooter type segments in a game if they wanted to. Making something difficult isn't the hard part. It's making something difficult but still attainable is what really makes a good game stick out.
Yeah.
But what have you been playing this week?
I have been playing. Ooh, let me think. I've been playing Blackguards 2 some more because I'm reviewing that at the moment, which is a uh, tactical turn-based RPG. I've been playing. I actually played a little bit of Dota 2
Oh,
earlier on in the week. I keep Dota is one of those games I'm not very good at Dota 2,
mhm.
but I play it because I feel that like a lot of people have a stress game. That a game that they just go to when they feel stressed, and you're just like, "Do you know
Yeah,
what? I just don't want to deal with life right now, so I'm just going to go play something." And
yeah,
Dota 2 is my stress game.
yeah,
And I
totally.
know that if I have like a bad day or something, I will just literally put hours into Dota 2 and then come out thinking, oh, well, there we go. It doesn't really achieve anything, but it's
Yeah,
kind of my stress game.
no,
So I've,
I totally feel you. I think the MOBAs are so good at that because they're so segmented and so easy to just hop in, get a game, hop out. It's a 45-minute, hour commitment, and you're in and out, and you feel like you've actually played something to completion instead of just playing like single missions in a game or something. It's
yeah.
it's great for that segmented type of gameplay.
And I actually just been playing over the past couple of days Darkest Dungeon, which is a roguelike turn-based RPG. It's an indie game that's coming out on early access on Tuesday. So I'm going to have a video up on my channel on Tuesday for that, and we'll probably talk about it more on another podcast because that game is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm excited for that game. I had no idea that game was coming out until you had mentioned it, but I watched the trailer and I read some of the Steam things that they have up there, and it looks really cool. I'm a huge fan of turn-based RPGs. That's what I enjoy. If you're not gonna do the weighty combat with actual collision with swords clanking against each other, I would much rather you go to a turn-based system than some kind of hybrid BS system.
But yeah, I mean that's about all I've been playing. I've been playing a couple of other games, but nothing worth mentioning really.
Yeah, this week I also finished Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. I finally got around
All
to
right,
playing
yeah.
that. I bought it on the Steam sale. I got around to playing through it. I just played the main mission. I haven't gone back and done any of the replay missions
The
or
game that
whatever.
isn't a game.
Yeah, it's I could not believe how short that game was,
It's
and
a
I knew that
demo.
game was short.
It's a
I knew
demo.
that game was short, but I still couldn't believe just how short it was. I was like, I'm literally sprinting through this, and nothing is stopping me. I guess I should have played it on hard. I played it on normal. I've never played a Metal Gear game before. That's
Oh
something.
really?
Yes. This says Ground Zero in the title, so I figured
That's a
this is
gaming
where this
confession if
started.
ever there was one.
Yeah, I don't I just never I was not a PlayStation guy. I was a Nintendo guy. My brother had the PlayStation. It was in his room, and I was rarely ever allowed to go in there.
Yeah,
But
I mean, Metal
I
Gear. It
you
was actually the Metal Gear franchise that really got me into video games. That made me sit there and think, "Oh, this is a really great thing right now."
really.
Yeah, it
So
was Metal Gear
start
Solid.
with Solid, yeah.
Yeah, because
That's
before that, I'd played video games. I'd played like stuff like Crash Bandicoot, and
mhm.
because I had a PlayStation when I was younger, but I'd never really played anything that had a great deal of story.
Mhm.
And I played through Metal Gear, and I was like, that was amazing.
Yeah, at some point maybe I have to go back and try those out. Maybe I'll emulate them at some
Well,
point.
you
And
could just get the they did a Metal Gear Solid remake for the Nintendo GameCube,
oh, did
which was
they?
called Twin Snakes, and that they actually updated the mechanics of the game so that they incorporated like the first person shooter element, so you could switch into first person mode and shoot enemies. And they updated the graphics and stuff, and so if you're going to play Metal Gear Solid again, play it on the GameCube because it's a
Okay.
really good.
Is that's just the original Metal Gear Solid, or is that a compilation
No,
package?
it's just the original Metal Gear
That's
Solid.
just the original. All
It's
right.
just
Well,
remastered.
I
It
was
was a
thinking
really
about just
good.
going back to the original on Nintendo, the NES, and trying that one out because I hear that's a really good game. It's
You can get the
not.
original NES versions online. They've got them on.
Oh, really? Like in a browser-based version?
Yeah, they just I think recently a lot of games just got released. I
Mhm.
can't remember what the website was, but like it had like thousands of games that were on DOS and NES and stuff like that, and they just released them all online now.
Yeah, that's. I don't know. But Ground Zeroes was. interesting. I think it looks gorgeous. And that's another looker of a game. That game looks amazing. I'm sure the next Metal Gear game will actually look amazing. And I that's really all I have to say about that game. The story was odd. Some the whole controversy that happened, the controversy that happened way back when. I totally understand where they were coming from on that. There were a lot of parts of that game's story that were very uncomfortable.
But I mean,
And wasn't
that's a Metal
necessarily
Gear
expect.
Solid game, though.
That's the thing. I went into that game thinking it was like a Gears of War third person shooter,
Mm.
but Metal Gear Solid is just a different animal. It's not that at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, Metal Gear Solid has always had sensitive topics in its stories, and the only problem I had with Ground Zeroes was the fact that it wasn't a game; it was a demo, and they were charging exorbitant amounts of money for a demo.
Yeah,
Wasn't
I
a fan of
waited.
that.
It was on Steam sale this time, and then I picked it up. It was like a couple bucks, I think. I feel like for that it was worth it. But and then the last game I played this week was called Overture, which is like a game that was kickstarted a while back, and it's like a 16-bit top-down roguelike with like kind of Diablo style elements. So you go through floors basically, and you pick a character, and they have different classes of character. You can pick your mage or fighter, and they all have left click attack and a right click attack. One is like their normal attack, and one's their special attack. They have MP and health, and you go around collecting gold and items and leveling up as you go through the different floors of the dungeon. But you also encounter different named enemies, kind of like in a Diablo style game where you'll find a named elite that'll come up and he'll have special loot, and then you have to defeat a boss every level to go down, and you continue like any other roguelike. And I found it really fun. I think it's a very well done roguelike game. I'm not always the biggest fan of those roguelike style games,
Hmm.
but I think it incorporates some of those Diablo elements, some of the loot elements very well. And I found it a very fun game. It's a couple bucks on Steam right now, so it's an early access, but I think it's worth checking out.
Cool.
So, news this week. There wasn't a ton of news in the early parts of the week. I was a little worried as to what we were going to talk about. Then, all of a sudden, a flood of news started happening. So, let's start with Ubisoft. This week, Ubisoft has decided to unauthorize several game keys sold by third party key sellers. They claim that these keys were all a result of just faulty or illegal selling of these keys. They were never meant to be sold at the prices they were sold at. And even EA is coming to the defense of Ubisoft, saying, yes, most of these keys were stolen off of Origin. So, what do you think about this? It's kind of a weird gray area, it seems, of these third-party key sellers.
Um, well, it depends on what site I mean, there's a lot of third-party key sellers um, on the internet that I know that they get their keys criminally,
Mhm.
frankly, and they shouldn't be doing it. Like at the end of the day, I don't support Ubisoft as a business at all. Like they're terrible.
They've
But
done some
when
shady
it
things.
when it comes to reselling like Steam keys and Origin keys and stuff like that on third party sites, there's a lot of third party sites that do have criminal elements, get their keys in a bad way, and I can't I don't support that because it's not okay.
Yeah,
Frankly, because I mean, they they say people say, well, it's Ubisoft, and you hear the old defensive, well, it's a big corporation, it doesn't matter to them, if they lose a bit of money, but at the same time, it's not just Ubisoft keys; it is indie developer keys, and
yeah.
a lot of indies get hurt by this, and that's not okay because while Ubisoft will probably be able to just write the losses off, smaller studios can't, and it can
Yeah.
really damage smaller studios, and then eventually stop new games coming out from those studios. So
Yeah, and even the larger studios, they end up using it as some kind of defense as to why they don't bring games to PC, or why, they put in such crazy DRM. They say, well, look at all these people that are buying games illegally, or just pirating the games outright. We have to do these things, and it's these people's fault. So you can't really fault them for that. And I think this is a scenario I'll have to side with Ubisoft as well. They are doing what they have to do, I think. and their hands kind of forced. It's a surprise they haven't done something like this earlier, but I don't know if maybe this is the first time they've really been able to pin down where the keys came from or something like that. But
Yeah. I mean, it's a simple case of, there's nothing wrong with third-party sites. Like, there's really good third-party sites like Green Man Gaming and stuff like
oh
that.
yeah, definitely.
There are legitimate sites to buy video games from, but it's the other sites that are a problem, and because they pirate and they cheat
Hmm.
and they steal, and it's not
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, definitely. Also, this week we had the Nintendo Creators Program announced. This is kind of a rider on Nintendo's policy for YouTube videos regarding different Nintendo properties. They have historically been a very YouTube unfriendly developer. They basically content claim anything they find on YouTube that they can just steal all the money from, basically. And I say steal with the literal sense of they're stealing money from these creators and these people that are trying to help the game and probably would help the game if Nintendo let them. But Nintendo has this archaic policy now they're announcing the creators program where people can partner basically with Nintendo, and that would result in Nintendo taking 30 to 40%, depending on how you partnered with them,
Yeah.
of the revenue just straight off the top. And this could obviously be a huge detriment to anyone who's planning on doing any Nintendo content or anyone who's done Nintendo content in the past. It's kind of a slap in the face to, the people that are really getting out there
Yeah,
and really, putting the word out for
it
Nintendo.
is.
And
It's an issue, but I mean, it's not just an issue with Nintendo. I mean, as someone who uses YouTube as their main platform to get content out, especially when it comes to video games, it's intrinsic in Japanese video game companies. It's not a Nintendo specific thing. I mean, Square Enix and other, Japanese companies have a real big problem with YouTube. And it's one of the reasons why I don't cover Nintendo games or any of their properties, because I just can't. It's not worth the hassle. And it's
right,
the same with Square Enix. I have covered a couple of Square Enix games in the past, and that is only really because I have. It's only if they give me blanket permission written down saying that I can monetize their content,
right.
monetize the content. If they don't give me that, I don't cover the game. It's that simple.
Yeah, and it's sad because YouTube is becoming the media of the future. It's what
It's the media of the now. It's not the
yeah.
future anymore. I mean, this is the thing, and more video game companies, particularly indie developers, get this now. That the fact that YouTubers pull in the kind of viewers that websites like traditional video game websites like Polygon dream of, and
Right.
YouTubers shift more units and more games than any other website anywhere, and
Yeah.
it's a fact, and it's something that you would think that companies like Nintendo, who want more sales, who have had a kind of up and down past in recent years,
Hmm.
you would think that they would be fully on board with people promoting their products free of charge, essentially.
Yeah.
But they're not. They don't like it.
And you know what's really sad is when you pair this with the other news this week of Joystiq and massively shutting down, you're seeing these websites, the traditional media websites, they're closing their doors, they're cutting back. There are layoffs, almost every couple months at these major websites, and YouTube is becoming a place where those people can go. And if the developers want to start tearing money from these people's hands, there's going to be nowhere to go for these people, and there's going to be a much worse media cycle for video games. Review content could be censored this way. Just there's so many scary things that could be done with the collapse of the traditional media, and then this kind of basically censorship of YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, I was very sad to hear about Joystiq and Massively, because I know a couple of people who work there, and I don't, I think we don't know the ins and outs of it, but I think it was more to do with the parent company AOL
Mhm.
having issues and wanting to downsize. So Joystiq and Massively got the axe, which is very sad because there's a lot of great writers on those sites, and there's a lot of great people on there, and they had a pretty big fan base and a good readership. and I was I was very sad to hear that, and I think it was a tough week for them. And I mean, even you know rival sites. I mean, video game websites, they compete with each other for viewers and readers.
Mhm.
But even places like Polygon and other places were writing articles saying that this is awful. This is terrible for video games media, video games journalism. Because every time you take away a site like Joystiq, a site like Massively, you're essentially just downsizing, and a little bit is lost because you lose the opinions and you lose the narrative of the site, and
Right.
it was very sad, and there's a lot of people now out of a job because of that, which is unfair, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the sad news continues even with Sega saying that it's offering voluntary retirement to up to 300 employees. It looks like their plan is to lay off 120 people, and this is kind of the first step into letting them leave on their own terms. But
Yeah, I mean, it's a very traditional way of doing it. If you want to get rid of a mass number of people, is to offer voluntary retirement so that they get benefits and stuff. And the reason that Sega are doing that is because they're moving towards more digital media and digital distribution specifically. And so developers like the developers that they own, like Creative Assembly and things like that, remain pretty much untouched. It's more to do with the publishing side of Sega. So the biggest that were hit was, the shutting down the American San Francisco office,
yep.
which primarily deals with like the Sega's publishing side. They're hitting Sega Europe pretty hard, and I think it's because of the almost the downside of digital distribution, in a sense that you don't need as many people manning stations anymore.
Right.
So they're trying to cut back there, which from a business perspective, I understand why they would do that, because especially with digital distribution, you don't need the hands, you don't need
Right.
the boots on the ground anymore.
Right. Yeah.
But at the same time, people losing their jobs isn't a nice thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's something I think we all want. We all want the rise of digital distribution. We all want the rise of YouTube and creative freedom of writers and things like that. But when you get those things, and we are starting to move towards those things, you have to cut from somewhere. You lose these more traditional sides. You lose the boots on the ground, as you said. You have to take from somewhere. It's not like we can just grow this industry at infinitum. There's going to be losses and there's going to be gains, and the losses will always be sad. But I think that's just a part of the industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the sad news continues even as Rooster Teeth announced this week that Monty Oum, director of animation at Rooster Teeth, has been hospitalized. They have not given much information. They said they they hope everyone respects their privacy, which I completely respect. They have set up a donation fund, so if you want to help the family in some way, you can go donate. We'll put a link to that in the show notes so you can check that out.
Yeah.
But this is just really sad news to someone who's very well respected in the gaming space.
I've been a fan of Monty's for quite a while. I really like his work. He's a very talented individual, and he recently created the Ruby series, and they didn't give any details about why he's been hospitalized, but they did say that he was in critical condition, and they weren't sure if he would recover, which means it's pretty serious.
Yeah.
So they did set up a fund, which you can go on if you go on the Rooster Teeth site. They set up a fund so that you people can donate to help his family with the medical expenses and stuff like that. Which I think they've raised like quite a lot already. They've raised
yeah,
over
I think
100,000.
I think it was 160,000, which is
Yeah, so-
amazing. Good for all of you. Good job,
So
guys.
you can go there, and if you want to help out, then
Yeah.
go do that.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely encourage you, if you have something to give, go ahead and give it. But only if you have something to give, of course. And don't feel bad if you can. And then finally, I'll let you do this last piece of news because I feel like you know far more about it than I do.
Yeah, so the Eternal Crusade, which is the MMO in development by Behaviour Interactive, they do a weekly live stream, which hasn't been going on over Christmas period, because I follow the Eternal Crusade quite a lot.
Oh, you have a poster right behind you, actually.
Yeah, so it's essentially the Warhammer 40,000 third-person shooter MMO that will be coming out at some point in the next couple of years. And basically, that they announced that Miguel Caron, who is the studio head of the Behavior Online studio, which is the main studio developing Eternal Crusade, is going to be leaving in the next 2 weeks, which a lot of people were quite surprised about because Miguel's actually worked tirelessly to kind of get a sense of good faith about the game and a really good community going. I mean, I've interviewed Miguel a couple of times about the game, and we've butted head on some issues, particularly monetization. But he was a pretty decent guy who, he had pretty good values for a studio head. He was promoting transparency. They didn't have a marketing firewall. So he's leaving. So a lot of the community are quite upset about it, and
do we know why he's leaving? Did he say it was on his own,
He said
or was it
on the live stream that it was due to Behavior Interactive basically having a corporate restructure, and that they didn't want studio heads anymore, and they were basically changing the way that the company works, which I can okay.
That sounds like corporate double.
I'll give a little bit of that. That's fine. Here's where, call me cynical though, but here's the thing: they brought in to replace Miguel. They brought in a new senior executive producer called Nathan Richardson. Now, Nathan Richardson is a guy from Iceland who worked for CCP on EVE Online, and then he left CCP and went to Tryon Worlds, and he was the senior executive producer on Defiance, which was the sci-fi third-person shooter MMO. And then he went to Ubisoft for around 6 to 7 months, and then he's come, obviously, to Behavior to work on the Eternal Crusade as basically the new head guy. Now, call me cynical, but the reason I think that they brought him in is because of Defiance, because he has experience in launching a third-person shooter MMO, and he has experience at launching said third-person shooter MMO across multiple platforms, which is something that Eternal Crusade has said that they would be very interested in doing, launching on both PC, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, etc., etc. So I assume that it isn't because I would say that's the main reason why Nathan was brought on board, because of experience launching a very similar game. I'm not sure why they decided to not have Miguel just take on the senior producer role instead of the studio head role. Not whether that is because he didn't want to.
Yeah, maybe he didn't want to take a demotion, basically.
Yeah, or maybe it was because Miguel thought it was time for a new project or something like that. But I mean, a lot of people in the community are very unhappy about it. Or at least they're very sad that Miguel's going, because he kind of built up a degree of trust between the player base and the developers. So whether that lasts now that he's going, I don't know.
So what kind of game is Eternal Crusade going to be? Is it a third-person? It's a third-person MMO?
Yeah, it's a third-person shooter that's very similar to PlanetSide 2. So it's going to be massive world. It's going to be in the 40k universe. There's 4 races, which are Space Marine, Orcs, Eldar, and Chaos. And it's going to be kind of, it's very similar to PlanetSide 2 in the faction warfare kind of thing.
So where are the Tyranids? Why aren't they in there?
The Tyranids are in there. They're going to be.
They are.
They're going to be NPCs.
Oh, but they're not playable. Why would I play a game where I can't play as a Tyranid?
Why would you want to play as a Tyranid? It wouldn't make sense.
I always like playing the Alien in Alien games. Like, I'll play a Tyranid too.
Play the Orcs then.
Yeah. I hate the Orcs. They paint everything red and it goes fast. Hate them.
It's great.
But and now I guess we'll go to our game of the week.
Yes.
This is gonna be a doozy, I think. Week's game of the week is H1Z1, which is on early access on Steam. Check that out right now if you want. It is $19.99, or your regional equivalent, I guess. I guess this is a very Amero-centric podcast name and pricing structure, but $19.99. The developer is Sony Online Entertainment. They are also publishing the game. You can check out the website and the link to purchase on Steam in the show notes. If you don't know what H1Z1 is, where have you been for the past, month? But it's a zombie survival horror thing that's available on early access on Steam. What else do you need to know? I hated this game. Oh my God, where do I begin? I'll be honest, I only played it for a couple hours, but I think that's all I needed to know. I'm not a huge fan of the survival, like make your own fun genre, basically, which is what this falls into. But there have been a couple games that I've really gotten into. Primarily, I used to play a lot of a game called Stomping Lands, which was a game that I kickstarted a while back. It's actually it's come under fire recently because the developers kind of walked away with the game in early access, mid development. But that game was a lot of fun. I think that they did the progression really well. They gave you some fun goals to attain. You could ride dinosaurs and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool. This game has none of that. There are no dinosaurs. There is no progression system. There are no goals. You run around, you find stuff, you eat a lot of berries. I ate more berries than I think I've done anything else in this game. And you look for metal, you don't find it, and then you stop playing.
Yeah, pretty much. Um, the thing, I'm not a fan of zombie apocalypse survival nonsense anymore. I think it's been done to death, and it's never been done very well.
Yeah.
So in H1Z1, it's an early access game. Now, I'm of two opinions about H1Z1, and the reason is I think that it has many flaws.
Yes,
but I think there are some good elements in there. I think that overall, I'm going to skip to the end and then go back, and that's
okay. All right, yeah, that's a good way.
The end is overall, it is a decent take on it. It's better. I would say it's better than its other counterparts in the genre.
Well, I mean, what are you talking about? like what you're putting it up against the other early access?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not a high bar. I agree.
Yeah,
but it's still better than, which is still better, I guess. The problem with, I think the main thing is essentially you start off, now it's in early access, I'm not sure if they're going to change this, but essentially when you first enter the game, you spawn in and you have a flashlight, you have a bag of bandages, and you have, do you have anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Oh, and a flare.
Oh, right, yes.
So, and then you essentially go off, and then the idea is to scavenge and for items, and keep alive, stop zombies, kill other players if they attack you, etc., etc. The main problem is with the gameplay thus far is that you essentially have a hunger system and a hydration system, as well as stamina and health bars. Now, the hydration and the hunger bars will constantly deplete as you play the game, which means that you have to constantly eat and find water. The problem with this is at the moment is that I think it doesn't work. It's not quite got the right balance, so that I feel that the hunger and the hydration just zap down way too quick. So it essentially means that the most readily available resource to replenish those things are berries, because berry bushes are everywhere.
Yeah.
So it essentially forces you to just to go around, collect berries and eat berries all day. It becomes a berry eating simulator almost.
Basically, yeah.
Which is very frustrating. And then on top of that, you have problems with the combat, because the combat is very much skill based. So it's a case of you've got to kind of dodge and move in real time, and
yeah, it's like a circle straight simulator too.
But the problem with it is that the game's got real bad latency and input lag issues. So you'll be going towards a player, and then the player will be coming towards you, and then suddenly he's behind you, and I'm like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
But again, that's part and parcel of launching an MMO. And at the end of the problem with I found that a lot of critics had, and a lot of reviewers who were talking about an early access game, is that I felt that they were giving undue criticism to a lot of the bugs, and a lot of the unfinished mechanics. Because at the end of the day, what were they expecting? It is an early access game. It is unfinished. It's not fully developed. Right. So I felt that like a lot of people gave it a little bit too much criticism, in that it was almost like they went in expecting a fully fleshed out MMO,
right?
Like a fully ready one, and I'm like, well, it's not. It's on early access for a reason.
Right. the one thing I would say to that is they are selling it, but it is early access. They'll give you that. But the thing that really puts it over the edge is they have fully functioning microtransactions already in the game.
Oh, absolutely.
And
I don't agree with that. Like it's like with any game, I don't agree with microtransactions in general. I was quite annoyed that the price of the game is $20 because when this game launches, it's going to be free to play. So it basically means that they're charging you to test their game, and then once it launches, everyone else can come in and play for free. Which, again, I would sit there and think, well, why do you want to buy it then?
right, yeah, no, yeah,
Why would you want to buy it when you're playing an unfinished product? Surely, if you just want to play the game, just wait a little bit, play it for free.
Yeah, I mean,
and in a more complete state.
I think that's anybody listening to this. I think that's the takeaway. Like overall, is I would not buy this game right now. Like, wait, it may be good at some point if you enjoy this type of thing, but right now, I don't think it's in a state where many people can get much enjoyment out of it, other than people who are streaming it or doing things like that. If you get a bunch of your friends together, maybe you can enjoy it. But I think if you get a bunch of your friends together, you can enjoy basically anything.
Yeah, but I think that if you do enjoy the genre, which I don't, but if you do, I can see you having a lot of fun in this game, regardless of its problems. I mean, I had a good time occasionally in the game. Like there was an instance where a guy who had much better gear than me, and I had only got a stick as a weapon, and that was about it. And he decided to chase me down and kill me just for the laugh. So I led him on like a good 5-minute chase, and then we eventually came upon like an urban. A suburb basically with a load of houses and stuff like that. So I was running through the streets, running through the back alleys, and eventually I was just getting tired of this because he just was not leaving me alone. So I just ran into a house and quickly scooted round the back of the door. So then he came in and he had a big axe, he had a helmet on for more head armor, he had backpacks, he fully loaded with equipment, and he came in, and I literally just ran round him, trying to avoid his axe and beat him to death with a twig. And even he, like, you can, because the game's got a proximity voice chat.
Yep.
You can, and the guy said, "Well done," because even he admired the fact that I'd just beat him to death with a twig. And then I got all his loot, which that was a fun experience.
Right.
There is but on the other side, there is frustrating experiences where I've been full of loot and I just kind of want to do my own thing. And people just keep coming to me and trying to kill me, and eventually do kill me, and then I've got to go back and start with nothing.
I think that's the allure that this type of game has for a lot of players, is that kind of randomness, that player interaction. I think that's why the genre has gotten so big. Is those YouTube and Twitch moments really is what those are. I think.
Yeah.
The moments that are really anyone can see what's going on and understand that this is a funny moment, or this is a scary moment, or this is a cool moment between friends.
But I think the biggest redeeming feature of the game, in its current state for me, is the crafting. I think the crafting is really well thought out. I like the fact that you basically to be able to craft, you have to know recipes, and to know recipes, you basically have to put items in the discovery tab and find recipes with the materials that you have, and you can mix and match materials, and it gives you it's not like just throw anything in there. It does give you helpful hints, so that like if you put in a piece of cloth as one of the materials, anything that has a recipe with cloth in, and any material that you have in your inventory that is for that recipe will be lit up, and everything else will be grayed out, so you know what you're able to combine, which is a really good thing, because there is games where you just like, I have no idea, just throw anything in.
Just throw stuff together and see what happens.
So I really like that. That was I thought the crafting was really good, and there's a lot to craft in that game. Which again is really good. I like the fact that you can build your own houses. You can even just pick up a pre-made house, like you go into an area, like a town, and then just fortify the windows and doors of an already standing house, and there you have a fortification. And I like the fact that player housing isn't instanced, like the games. So that if you can get into someone else's house, you can go in and have a look, or you can break in. If you want, I like that.
Knock down the walls.
Yeah, I like that.
You can definitely do that. I think that the game has a lot of different systems, and I feel like they're all half baked at this point, or even less than that. So I think that's the point of early access, though, is those half baked things they can work with the community to improve. It's just the problem with it has a price tag and microtransactions for a game that will be free.
Yeah, and I like the biggest. I think the main problem I had with it, aside from all the other problems, was the zombies. I'm not sure why this is a zombie apocalypse, because there's barely any zombies anywhere.
Yeah.
The problem with the zombies is that they don't have AI at the moment, or if they do, it's in a very limited capacity, which means that essentially, if a zombie basically aggroes you aggro a zombie, it basically follows you, and then if you suddenly change course, so if you're running in a straight line and you suddenly veer left, or just completely change direction, the zombie will go up to the point where you change direction, stop for like 3 seconds, and then follow the path that you took, which is ridiculous. And zombies are very, very easy to kill, like one arrow to the head and the down, which is fine. That's what zombies should be. The problem is, with zombie games, zombies individually should be weak. The strength of zombies is in numbers, in zombie hordes, where you just get, like in Left 4 Dead, you just get overwhelmed with numbers.
Exactly.
But H1Z1 doesn't have that. You just have a couple of zombies here and there, and the only thing zombies are good for is basically killing so you can get cloth. And that basically means that zombies in H1Z1 currently just basically play the role of starter zone mobs in like World of Warcraft, because they're pointless. They're easy to kill, and you just get a little bit of loot off them. That's it.
Right.
They pose no actual threat.
Right. And there's no variety to them either. They're all just the same walker type zombie. There's no runners. There's no dogs. There's nothing that these other zombie games have that make it some variety at least.
Yeah, so I mean, zombies in the game just offer no threat whatsoever, which defeats the point in a zombie apocalypse. Because I went into one of the bigger urban areas. In the bigger urban areas, I should not be able to feel safe going out on the street, just running down the middle of the road.
Yeah,
I can do that. The roads are clear.
Yep.
There's nothing there. There's a couple of stray zombies which can be picked off easily. I can easily run away from any that get too close. Yep. There's
never any in the houses. I've never run into a zombie inside.
No,
the
they're
house.
never in the houses, and so they offer no threat. So essentially, what the game is currently is that your only real threat is either starvation or other players, because other players in that game are assholes.
As always.
And which essentially means that it's not a zombie apocalypse. The game becomes basically the Hunger Games with zombies.
Yeah.
Like, you're in a square map. It's pretty big.
Yep.
Where basically your biggest threat is either dying by the elements or dying by a stranger.
Right.
Like, the zombies aren't. They don't account for anything.
Yeah. And probably my biggest problem with the game, and I think I've had like 6 biggest problems so far, is the fact that there are no goals to speak of, really. There's no like end game to it. It's just stay alive, and that's all you do. And I know a lot of these games that is your only goal, and the people really make the challenges, but I feel like there's no even basically short-term goals to get you started. The goal is always just, stay alive. That's all you have to do. Find berries, eat. There's no like progression to, okay, well, you should probably start by doing this, and then like set up your shelter, and then expand your shelter, and continue on to make a farm maybe or something like that. There's no.
I think the reason it's difficult because it's intended to be a sandbox, which is a very much essentially just do your own thing, whatever you want to do. I think there is progression in terms of, do you want to go in and craft and basically make your own base? That there is a progression in that, you need to go out and collect materials, keep crafting, etc., etc. But the biggest problem I found with the game at the moment is that there's no real tutorial in it. Now, I'm not saying that you should lead me by the hand to find out what to do, but there was a couple of things that stumped me for quite a while, and I didn't know how to do. For example, where did I get scrap metal from? Now, you get scrap metal from cars, but what it doesn't tell you is that you need a crowbar. So you need a lot to collect items, especially like if you kill a deer. To be able to get meat from the deer, you need to have a cutting item in your inventory. And there's lots of things like that the game doesn't tell you.
Right.
So there's a lot people are running around looking for certain items, like where's metal, where's this, where's that, and they don't know how to get them. And it's usually because you require a certain type of weapon or item to get to be able to collect it, which the game doesn't offer any helpful hints or anything like that. Which is, it's a bit, so you go in and it's asking you to survive, but you don't know how to. Which, I mean, for example, collecting berries and collecting twigs from bushes, I didn't even know that existed the first 3 times I played the game.
Right.
Because you go up to a bush and it doesn't tell you that you can press E to collect.
It's not shiny or anything.
No, it doesn't tell you, which is fine, but it should, if it doesn't want to tell you that in game, that's fine, but at least have some kind of hint system that says, you know, you can collect berries from berry trees.
Yeah, I think that the problem is that a lot of players would say, oh, that's the whole point of the game. Like, why would you be playing this game if you don't want to discover these things? But I think there's a difference between discovery and just being outwardly obtuse about the main mechanics of the game.
Yeah. No, it's not. I mean, discovery's fine.
Yeah.
But you need to explain the basic mechanics. So you don't have to say, to get scrap metal, you have to use a crowbar on a car. What you should say is, one of the mechanics is that, you know, tools are, if you use tools on objects, you'll be able to get certain materials.
Right.
That explains the overall mechanic without giving you specifics. Exactly. So that still leaves the opportunity for surprise. So you can experiment on different things.
Definitely. And don't tell me what the crafting recipes are, but tell me maybe you should be trying to get X, Y, and Z. Maybe you should be trying to build a fort. Maybe you should be trying to do this. So I know that, okay, I should probably be trying to build a fort. Maybe I'll get some wood and then combine that with some other item, and then...
I'm not that bothered with the crafting, with the recipes, because I thought that the system in place is pretty good, because you've got the discovery tab, you whack stuff in, and then you see what comes out, and that's kind of the fun part of crafting for me, is finding different recipes. So I thought that was pretty self-explanatory for anyone who's kind of played the genre or crafted in a game before. That was pretty self-explanatory, but it was the basic mechanics of how to pick things up, what's available and stuff like that I thought that they should have at least put a kind of hint system in. And there was a big problem with loot when the game launched, and the fact that you could walk around for hours not finding anything in houses and stuff, which they have been working to resolve by improving the respawn rates of items.
Yep. Yeah, I was finding servers just totally picked clean when I was going through.
But again, you still run into that problem if you go in at a high population time on the server. You'll still run into that problem. So usually the best way to get gear is to kill other people and steal it from them.
Which I don't necessarily disagree with that type of design. I think if you want to make it high population means lots of scarcity, means you have to work together or work against other players. I think that's actually a good mechanic for a game. But I feel like I was on low population servers and there was just nothing and no one around. And if there's going to be nothing around, then at least make it so that other people are around. But
I don't mind there being a player element to PvP is fine. The problem is that I would have liked to see a little, like I said, more zombies. Create a real threat from zombies, so that if you're alone in a city and you get another person coming towards you, makes you stop and wonder, do I actually want to kill this person, or will they help me escape the zombies?
Yep.
You know what I mean? It doesn't offer much options at the moment. But do you want to talk about the pay to win?
Well, that was actually going to be my very next question. I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss the microtransaction element that this game has. What do you think about the microtransactions in this game?
Well, let's have a bit of context, right? So, months and months and months and months ago, like early last year, basically John Smedley and other developers came out saying, and this is the actual, I'm paraphrasing, but it's pretty much the quote, which said, you won't be able to buy guns, ammo, food, and water in-game. Now, you can, with airdrops. Which basically, so you pay $5 for an airdrop, and then a plane will come over and it will drop a crate in a vicinity of you. It's around about 200 meters, something like that. I think they've made it bigger recently. That basically, and it shoots up a green flare, so that anyone who's in the vicinity will be able to see it, so it's up for grabs for anyone. And in that crate, there will be guns, ammo, food, water, supplies, whatever. Now, at launch, there was a big uproar about people like, you said you weren't going to do this. You said you weren't going to be able to buy guns, weapons, ammo, all this. Now, and they repeatedly used that quote saying, you said this is what you said. But however, what people kind of didn't fail to realise is that since August last year, the developers and SOE have been saying that airdrops will contain these items. Now it's like kind of settled down a little bit.
Right.
There's almost two sides to this. There's one side saying that it isn't pay to win because it's a server event. It's up for grabs for anyone. It's not pay to win.
Right.
There's the other side saying it is pay to win, and we don't like it.
Right.
This shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah.
I am on the particular side of it is pay to win.
Okay.
I appreciate the fact that it's up for grabs for people, and there is the element of skill in the game, so that regardless of what kind of weapons and equipment the other guys using, you still have a good chance to kill them,
right,
and steal their stuff. The problem is, my issue is this: money changed hands. So without that money, that transaction taking place, that crate of weapons would not be there. It doesn't matter who's on the receiving end of those. To me, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the original purchaser got them or another player got them. Right. That content would not exist without money.
Yep.
So whoever gets it has still got one up against other players in some form.
Right.
That's pay to win, regardless. That's where I stand. That is pay to win. It doesn't matter who's on the receiving end of it. It's the fact that money was paid for weapons and stuff that gives people an advantage, regardless of who gets it in the end.
Right. If it's a one-on-one scenario, then I think it would be more understandable. Where if you pay for something, the other person can get it and have that up on you. But it's a massively multiplayer game, so if someone buys something, someone else gets it, that person is still up on everyone else that didn't pay that money and didn't want those guns to be there, didn't want that airdrop to happen, that was paid for, and someone else is benefiting from that payment.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's as simple as that. I think it's still pay to win.
Yes.
I don't think it's as unfair. It's not like, whoever gets the guns is that they're going to absolutely own everyone, because it's not that simple, but it's still pay to win. It's still a pay to win mechanic. And
I think that it's one of the cooler ideas in games, though, that I've heard in a long time. As pay to win as it may be, I think it's very interesting and almost scary to think that in this game you can pay money and possibly not get anything. Not only possibly not get anything, just have something dropped and create this server event that's based on real money. I think that's a really cool idea with some scary implications, but it could be done, I think, very well in some facet in some game.
Yeah, I mean, there was someone saying that, I'm not sure how true this is, but someone saying that basically, it drops in a radius, but that doesn't matter because people can just walk to the edge of the map.
Right.
And pay the money,
right,
and then the airdrop, it's pretty much dead away from other players, so you're nearly guaranteed to get there first.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that, and I've talked about this in other games. I think it's very scary when you start making microtransaction payments that don't directly correlate to something in game. I feel that you get scarily close to gambling in that respect. And there are children out there, there are, people out there with some issues. And when you have a credit card tied to your Steam account or your SOE account, and someone could be making lots of these payments and not getting anything out of it, I think that's scary to think about. But on the other side, I think that it's an interesting idea to create an event where someone has to pay to make this event happen and then could possibly get nothing. So I don't know where I stand on them. I think it's interesting that they're going this direction, for sure.
Definitely. But yeah, I mean, as I say, if you're interested in the game, I would wait, to be honest, and play it for free. There's no point in paying for a game that, just be a bit patient. That's all I'm saying.
Definitely. There are so many other zombie survival games out there. Dying Light just came out last week. I hear that's a pretty good game. I know it's more expensive, but heard that's a pretty good game. There are other games out there that are probably more complete at this current time, so I would check those out. And as we always end this segment, this was your one game you played this week. Would you have been satisfied?
No.
No. Yeah, I'm in the same mind. I don't think this would have been a good game to purchase if you only had $20 to pay for video games this week. Like I said, there are so many other games out there that do this better at this current time. But maybe in the future, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. It is early access.
Yeah, there's always. I mean, there's a lot of development to go yet, so we'll see if they improve the game or not.
Yep. And I think that about does it with this week's show.
Yep.
So if you'd like to contact us, you can reach us at 20orLESS podcast or 20orLESS podcast at gmail.com. Where can we reach you, Cosmic?
You can find me on Twitter, which is at CosmicEngine99, or you can go to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/thecosmicengine.
Yeah, you should definitely check out his YouTube page for sure. Cosmic this week actually just started up a Patreon, so if you want to give him a couple bucks, I highly suggest you do that. You can check that out through his YouTube channel. So.
Give me food money.
He needs to eat. The man needs to eat. Look at him. He's wasting away over there. You can reach me at GTeeg on Twitter or Gaddock at gaddockgaming.com. Where I post this podcast. I have some blogs over on gaddockgaming.com, so you can go ahead and check that out. And I think that's it. If I'm forgetting anything, that's because I didn't bother to write it down. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of the $20 or Less podcast, and we shall see you next time.